Well done and welcome back. And week 6 of the 6-week intensive coaching and hypnotherapy course. We're going to be talking, as I explained in the introduction, about personalities and people and how other people can lead to such conflict in our life. But before we do, I am going to kick off by talking, as always, about the brain, because this is so important to understand. So do listen. I know this is the 6th time you've heard it by now, and you should start. Being able to really make sense of the different parts and be relating them to your own life and working out what needs to change. So the conscious part of your brain, the bit you know as you, the bit that interacts with the world and the bit that we're using to interact with each other at the moment. And that is attached to this vast intellectual resource, your intellectual mind. And when you work off this part of your brain, you generally get things right in life. It will always come up with answers based on a proper assessment of the situation, and it's generally very positive. This is the bit we don't share with other animals. But we have another bit, and this is our original primitive part. The centre and influential part of this brain is the amygdala, and this is the bit that we refer to as the fight, flight, depression part of the brain. And it's associated with 2 other primitive parts. You've got your hippocampus, which holds your primitive and sometimes inappropriate behavioural patterns and experiences. And then you've got the hypothalamus, which regulates the chemical responses in our body and mind. So to put this in a bit of context, if you were to go outside and you were to bump into that polar bear again, what would happen? You would very quickly lose intellectual control. Your primitive brain would step in, your heart rate would go up, your stomach would start churning, you'd get all sweaty and you'd be off like a shot. Now, that's appropriate for polar bears, and it's appropriate for any other forms of danger that we get into, or that we could get into. You know, your primitive brain will instantly alert you to some sort of crisis, emergency, or danger, and it will step in and take control, and it will take control of your mind, and it will take control of your body, because it doesn't want you thinking and rationalising what to do at that particular time. You know, if you were to bump into a polar bear or a saber-toothed tiger or something dangerous, it's not going to make sense for you to stand there and going, right, now, a polar bear, what should I do? Should I run left? Should I run right? Should I stand still? Or should I go and give it a hug? You know, it doesn't want you trying to work out what to do and rationalise. It doesn't need that intellect at that time. It needs the part of your brain that is going to keep you safe. And as they say, better safe than sorry. So it will err on the side of caution and danger. It will look at the worst possible scenario and it will get you out of there. And when it does, it behaves in a particular way. When it does look at this worst possible scenario. And that also applies to when you've had an argument with somebody. And it will obsess about things. And it won't let you forget about it. So you will have these things on your mind again and again and again. If you ever had that experience where somebody something is around people is bothering you, has caused you stress or upset or extreme anxiety, and you just cannot get it out of your mind. It's the last thing you think about when you're going to sleep at night. You wake up thinking about it in the morning. And every idle moment it's just churning over and over and over. And as we talked about imagination and reality back in week 2, your brain will make it up what this other person is doing or thinking or why or motivation, and you can tell yourself, I'm just making that up, just stop it. But people especially get on our mind and then we can't stop thinking about them. But all we can do is refer to previous patterns of behaviour. Whatever you did yesterday, you survived, you'll be encouraged to do it again today. And those patterns of behaviour nearly always have no relation to what you're thinking about or what the problem is. You know, typically people who are depressed and worrying about how other people think about them in their life. Now, this obviously isn't everybody, but this is just a typical scenario that we see a lot of people with. will eat. Some people stress eat as well. Some people can't eat because they're stressing. Other people will try and take too much control of that situation or that person. Some people will just want to hide away and not face the world. Some people will have an OCD, or an obsessive compulsive disorder, one that is in their mind with thought patterns or physical behaviours. Some people will come out with physical ailments, actual physical illnesses and ailments like IBS, because they are worrying about something. And actually, typically, it's people who worry about other people that will come out with physical ailments. And I will explain more about that when I talk about personality types. And then it will make a bit more sense for you and why I've said that. But it is a very common thing to be worrying about other people. Now, there is a reason for this as well, why people are such a big concern in our life, and that's because we need people to survive. Human beings are tribal. We don't work very well on our own. Now, with modern technology and the internet and phones, this has enabled us to live as loners and to live very solitary lives. And in recent years, we have become more and more solitary. It's not so long ago, it's only sort of 50 years or so ago, that families would have stayed and lived in the same towns and villages. But that's changing rapidly. You know, most young people go off to university or some sort of education. They leave home and they will live on their own or solitary lives. They will leave the family environment. They may come back, but they will leave it for a time, and that's actually quite unusual. And it's not how we are meant to live and thrive and survive. And survive is the pertinent word there, because our brain is about survival. Now, if you are not behaving as human beings were supposed to around our people and community, your brain will cause a lot of anxiety around people. And that's particularly true when we've fallen out or we've had an upset with other people. Because, as I said, we're not very good at surviving on our own. You know, as humans, we don't really have many natural defences. If you think about it, you know, we're not poisonous. We don't taste nasty. We don't have spiky things all over our body as defences. We don't have any natural weapons. We can't run very fast at all. In fact, you know, we are pretty defenceless if there were predators out there. Our strength is in our numbers, and one of the reasons that we have been so successful as a species is our human brain and our ability to communicate, cooperate, and work together. You do see this in the animal kingdom in some places, in wild dogs, for example, and some other predators. Their ability to communicate and cooperate, and it's what keeps us thriving and surviving. So it's no wonder that we start to get into emotional difficulties if relationships within our lives, either on a personal level or an extended level, have been unbalanced. And that, you know, that goes as far as, you know, we don't see enough of people. And it's one thing that I consciously have to do, because I live on my own in quite an isolated way. I don't go out to work and interact with other people. I work from home mainly. So I can find myself quite isolated. My family is spread out all over the place. I can find myself quite isolated, and I'm quite self-sufficient. I practice what I preach. But probably one of my worst traits is that I don't get out and be with people enough. And I can go for days where I suddenly realise that I haven't spoken to anybody, or I haven't actually seen anybody in person that I know to have a chat, and I have to make a point of going and seeking somebody out to go and talk to. Probably comes across a bit weird sometimes when I'm not in a place where there are friends, but it's just getting out and being with people. Humans need human contact. So when we don't get that, or when that balance is upset, or when there's been an argument, or somebody in our life is behaving in a way that we don't understand, our primitive brain can step in and be quite active, and we will worry about what other people think about us. And this can come in a number of forms. And the thing I want to talk to you first about is boundaries. We need to have our strong boundaries with other people. When we talk about personality types in the next section, you will see that different personalities have different beliefs and boundaries. And it is up to you to set those for what's best for you. And I don't mean in any sort of unhelpful or selfish way. It's just knowing what's healthy for you to do. For example, you might be one of those people that is always wanting to help other people, and they say yes to doing something too quickly. And then as it gets nearer and nearer, then you think, oh, why did I say that? And it ends up causing you stress. Now, if we are causing ourselves stress or anxiety, what happens is we go to the primitive brain. And don't forget, the primitive brain looks at the world negatively, or negatively forecast and negatively introspect. So what ends up happening is that you end up resenting those people for taking advantage of you, or for you constantly having to help, and it being all one-sided, and you're always the one giving help, and they never do anything for you, and all those things that go around in your head. When actually, in effect, all they were doing was asking for your help, and you said yes. So it is up to you to put those boundaries down and learn how you can say no that is acceptable for you, and that you don't feel you're being selfish or uncompromising for other people. And I've got a nice little story about this. One of my best friends, she is very much a people person. She's one of those people that you can't help liking. She's absolutely lovely. And people befriend her. Now, I'm going back a number of years here, but I will never forget her telling me about somebody that she met. She went back to university as a mature student to do a degree, and she met somebody on the course who became a friend. And this friend lived not far down the road from her, and my friend's house was on her route to work. And she started to develop a habit of popping in for breakfast, this new friend did. And so she would turn up at my mate's house at about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. She started being a regular time. She got to know what time breakfast was, and she'd knock on the door and say, "Morning, I've come for breakfast." And the first morning I said, "Oh, nice to see you. Come in, have a cup of tea, and I'm just getting ready." But it became a habit, and it became a bit of a problem for my friend, because she had 2 very young children at the time. She was trying to get them ready and off to school. Her husband was also trying to get ready for work at the time. And then this person, who was a relative stranger, was a friend of us, we didn't know them very well, was turning up for breakfast amid the morning routine and chaos. And if you think about that in your house, I'm sure that's not an appropriate time to turn up, perhaps. But then this is down to belief systems. Who knows? For this girl, breakfast time might have been a sociable time in her household growing up. It might have been quite common for people to pop in. It might have been a time where several people popped in and everybody sat down and had a chat whilst they got ready to get on with their day. You don't know. And this is the thing, is you don't know how other people see the world. And you don't know for them what they think is normal. And I will tell you that people rarely do something to deliberately upset other people or to put them out. And if they knew that they were, they would probably be mortified, especially, when it's a friend like that. But this habit continued, and it started to cause a bit of grief in my mate's house, because her husband would start to get not irritated, but didn't see why this new friend had to turn up for breakfast at the most inconvenient time in their household during the day. And so he started telling me, just tell her not to come, or not to come at a different time. And he couldn't understand why my friend couldn't say, don't come. But she didn't want to upset this new friend. She didn't want to upset her. And she thought by telling her not to come, it would upset her. And then she'd have to deal with that. And she didn't want this girl to think badly of her. So this habit continued and continued. And it started to become a bigger and bigger problem. Until one day, my friend realised, right, I have got to do something about this. How can I do this differently? How can I approach this problem so that she's not coming in first thing in the morning for breakfast, but I don't offend her? And what she did, she said to her, do you know what, it's pretty hectic around here first thing in the morning. I don't really have time to talk to you and give you the attention that I want to. How about we arrange to go out or meet up on a Saturday, or to go out one evening, or we could also stay after college, after uni one day. We could go out for a coffee after that. And this girl said, yeah, okay then, yeah, no problem. She had no idea she was causing such an upset in my friend's house. But there was all this misunderstanding that was ending up in stress and anxiety for my friend and her family. And that's all that needed to happen, just approach it in a different way. And basically, cut long story short, the problem was solved. They started meeting up after uni, when she would have been out anyway for a coffee. They had quality time. They could chat without the kids running around, getting involved, and the chaos of the morning. So that's what I'm saying. It is up, if something or somebody is upsetting you, it is up to you to make change. The other person is probably completely unaware that they're causing a problem in the first place. And this quite often comes down to how somebody says something, because some people are very direct and they just say it like it is. Some people think that is rude, or they're being overly aggressive. It's all a perception about your personality types and how you were raised and what you're used to. And you can't judge somebody else and how they behave on how you would react and behave about a situation, because they're not you and you're not them. You cannot read their mind, they cannot read yours. And this is why communication is very, very important. The same goes for boundaries around work. Now, this is something I do see a lot of when people come to see me for hypnotherapy or coaching. They are feeling taken advantage of at work, and they just don't have time to get a balance in their life. It's one thing that we will talk about towards the end is balance. Getting a balance in your life is so important. And the biggest excuse I hear for not having a balance, not getting out and doing the things that you enjoy doing, is I don't have time because of work. And that's what I want you to think about right now. Yeah, if you are career-minded, if you are working in an organisation where you're not necessarily paid by the hour, you're paid to do a job, any organisation, any company, whether that be public sector or private sector, is going to want to get their money's worth out of you. And they will put more and more work on you if they can. And if you do that work, who have you got to blame but yourself? Now, mostly people will blame their employer for being unreasonable, to putting too much work on them. But actually, it is down to you to put your boundaries around those times. Think about something in your life that is important enough, is enough of a priority for you to not change it. Say you have to pick children up after school, or you have to drop them off at school in the morning, for example, something like that. You can't not do that. So however much work is being put on you, you will work around that. It's just a matter of changing your priorities and recognizing that looking after yourself as a priority is your responsibility. And you have to put yourself first. Yes, your job is important, and it can be important, and I'm not disputing that at all. But if you are not in the best place mentally and physically to be able to do the job, then the job is going to suffer. Okay? Now, when I say you have to put yourself first as a priority, I mean that, but I don't mean it in a selfish way. It is not selfish to think on those terms. It is selfless, right? Because when you are looking after yourself, when you're putting yourself first as a priority, and you're looking after your own needs and getting a balance in life, you are happy, calm, relaxed, and in control. And then you have all the resources, the internal resources you need to be able to give to other people in an unselfish way. Where this becomes selfish is where you are giving to other people, but you are resenting those people for taking. That becomes selfish, because that then becomes about you. And this is what your primitive brain does. When your primitive brain steps in, because it's about survival and because it's about you, it will apply the world to you, and it will make you the centre of attention. So it will it'll say, well, they're always taking advantage of me. It's all about me, me, me. That's when it becomes selfish. So if you let your anxiety levels go up because you are just saying yes and giving too much and stretching yourself too thin, and you're neglecting your own needs, then the primitive brain will pull you back and make you concentrate on me, but it will negatively forecast around you and start negatively thinking about the other people in your life and resenting them. Now that's selfish. If you give unselfishly, then you are happy, you are calm. Other people are much nicer around you and will give back. It's extraordinary how that happens. You start giving in an unselfish way because you're looking after yourself, and other people will start looking after you. If you are constantly giving and not putting those boundaries in, people will start to, what you feel is taking advantage, because they will just accept your behaviour as that's what you're choosing to do. And they won't know otherwise, because they won't have a clue what's going on inside your head and inside your life. So if you're somebody who says yes to everybody every time they ask, they will come to expect you to say yes. You are teaching them that you will do things for them. So that's why you need to put the boundaries down. They're not going to come and say, Emmy, are you sure you can do that? Are you sure? They might do, but it's still up to you to say yes or no. And if you say yes, then you are making a rod for your own back. And like I said, this doesn't mean being mean or excluding people from your life. It just means getting that balance. I want to tell you about a client who used to come and see me, and I'm sort of going back to work a little bit here. This chap was he was definitely the worst workaholic I've ever come across. Now, work was his inappropriate habit in his hippocampus that he developed because his anxiety levels had gone up. But his anxiety was also was being affected by his work, and he got into this whole vicious cycle. Now, what was happening was that he was working until 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and then he was getting home, and he was, of course, absolutely exhausted, and he wasn't getting enough sleep. and enough quality sleep. So he woke up in the morning and he just had to go back to work. So he was arriving at work. Quite often he was just pushing it on time or just right on the line of being on time. And he would be absolutely exhausted because he was working too hard, and because he was exhausted, his brain wasn't functioning efficiently. He couldn't function efficiently. And so he wasn't getting his work done in time, so he had to stay late. So he'd be staying late to the early hours of the morning just to try and catch up. And he was constantly in turmoil about he wasn't performing, because he knew inside that he wasn't performing as he should be, but he was so tired. So he would stay late, he'd be exhausted in the morning, and he'd just be going through this again. He'd be going in weekends, just trying to catch up. He'd never take a holiday. And this went on for years and years and years. And when he came to see me, I started teaching him that, and he started realising that actually he was doing himself an injustice. It had become a very negative pattern of behaviour. And what was happening was because he couldn't function well mentally, because he was so tired, his work was declining. And what he started doing is he started pulling this back, and he started finding things in the evening that he had to go to. Like, how he dealt with it is he signed up on courses at college, evening classes. So he committed himself financially and with his time to going along to his courses. So on those particular days, he had to leave work at a reasonable time. And he was doing his course. His brain was changing emphasis. So it was having a rest. And he was going home and he was sleeping. He was getting refreshed. His brain was having a break. So when he got into work in the morning, he was more ready for the day. And he became much clearer in his thinking, much more focused and much more efficient. And he discovered, to his surprise, that he could get his work done in an 8-hour day. And he would plan better because he would take the time out to do it, because he wasn't always in a rush. So he would be planning his day more effectively, and he would be cutting it off at a certain time. He became disciplined about that. His other life that he was starting to develop and get a balance with started becoming a priority, because he was making friends for the first time in his life, and he was having a social life because he was getting invited out to things, and his whole life just grew. It had become just about work, and his life started growing and growing and growing again. He started enjoying things. He started doing more physical things that were burning off the anxiety he was producing from worrying about work and being stressed about work all the time. And it resulted in him being promoted. And he couldn't believe it. He was working half of what he was before, but he got promoted because people around him saw him in a different way. His anger had gone, his stress had gone, he'd become efficient, he had learned how to say no, how to have the balance at work, and his whole life changed. And he got that promotion that he had been trying to understand why he didn't have that for years. And that was just by not working so much. And this is what happens, is that the more and more we work, the more stressed we are with work, the less efficient we become. And we end up, if you like, there's a lovely analogy that comes from the sailing world. My passion is sailing. And actually we have a lot of sayings in our language that come from sailing. And there's one that, when you get into that situation, they talk about, you're working in the engine room, or you're working on deck all the time, just firefighting, just trying to keep the deck clean, just trying to keep the engine going. And you work harder and harder just trying to keep things going, instead of stepping back, getting out on the bridge and steering the ship. And that's what you want to do. When you step back and you start looking at things from a different perspective, you start to see about where you can make changes in your life. When you step back and you look at it from a different perspective, you can see where you can change your habits or what you're doing with other people. You can change how you're dealing with other people. And you can change your boundaries around work or around your personal life or around people in your life you feel are taking advantage. And that's where I want to come on to the first exercise for this week. It's about boundaries. And I want you to take some time, get a pad of paper or some paper or a pen, and I want you to write down as many instances or as many places as you can that you think your life might be out of balance or your boundaries aren't in that as they should be. And I want you to focus on what you can change or how you can change. You know, if it's you're working too hard, you don't need to know right now what to do to change it. You just need to identify that you're doing too many hours at work. Okay, that will come. You know, as we work through this, the solutions, the answers will come from your intellect. It's not for me to tell you what to do or how to behave differently. I don't know your life. You're the expert on you, and it will come from you. But the first step is to identify what you would like to change in your life, or what you feel needs to change, or even what you want to change. There are things that need to change. And I don't accept you go, there's nothing I can change. There is always something you can change, and it is a choice. It's just you may well right now have a fixed belief system that you can't change this. And you will, but the first step is to identify what you would like to be different. If you could do more in your life that was for you, what would that be? Okay, what would you do more of? If it was about getting a balance in your life and you could do more things that were for you, your downtime, your hobbies, the things you enjoy seeing. You know, it might be around people and you want to see more, you don't see enough of friends or relatives. It might be hobbies, or you might want to get a hobby. You might want to have more of a life outside work, like this old client who used to come and see me. But have a think about everything we've talked about just now and write down some areas where you would like to see change in your life. And then after you've done that, click play on the next video and we will talk about personality types. See you on the other side.